Thank you for providing me with an opportunity to talk about integrating cognitive programs into the classroom. And we call this the whole cohort program, mainly because it's an entire class is engaging in a developmentally appropriate cognitive exercise for 30 minutes during their school day. So schools in Canada, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and Spain, including SEC, have implemented this program. So I want to talk a little bit about that. And look at what is our vision as an organization. It's really to transform lives through enhancing cognitive capacities. And this came out of my journey. I struggled with learning difficulties. I delved into neuroscience to create programs to address my difficulties. And then I took this work out into the world to help students not just struggling with learning difficulties. We now work with people with addiction. We work with students in regular classes to enhance cognition. We work with individuals with acquired brain injury. Those, as I can put up my hand, as we're getting older and there's a little bit of cognitive decline. So our vision is to transform lives through the application of the principles of neuroplasticity. And I like to think about, what it would look like in the world if we could create a world where people have the opportunity to enhance cognitive abilities. So this is my vision. And if we put this in the context of education, because I like to put things in context, if we think about what the goal of education has been over the years, so in the 1800s, about 200 years ago, really the goal was to educate individuals with basic knowledge and skills so that they could be productive members of the workforce. This was what I call the one-size-fits-all approach to education, because what needed to be learnt and mastered was really paramount. The learner was kind of irrelevant. It was the content and the knowledge that was critical. And then there was a shift, around the 1980s with the work of Ken Robinson, Howard Gardner, and many others, looking at education and really recognizing that learners learn differently, that each learner has their own unique cognitive profile. And this was the beginning of differentiated or individualized instruction, which was tailored to the profile of the learner. And this became best practice. And really, but if we think about the presupposition underlying both models, the learner still in both models is kind of viewed as a fixed black box that we're adapting to. So either, we're pouring in content, or we're recognizing that black box has variability and diversity and variation, but we're changing the external to meet the black box. And for me, I think, what is the next reform in education? And I think this is really a neuroplastic or neuroscience approach. And this is really, if we imagine that we can change the black box, which is the learner, through harnessing the principles of neuroplasticity. So we can fundamentally and significantly change the cognitive capacity of the learner. And this is our goal in this whole cohort program. And, speaking to the converted here, we know that underlying everything we do over the course of the day is our brain, whether we're talking, whether we're walking, whether we're scratching our nose, planning a budget, leading a project, our brain is engaged. And over the course of the day, every aspect of our brain is called upon to engage. It really shapes who we are. And each person, each individual, has their own unique cognitive profile. Now, people are interested on our website. There's a free questionnaire. If you're curious, you can go in and take it, and it will give you a snapshot of your cognitive profile. And we look at a learning difficulty as what we call a cognitive load. This is where there's a pileup of cognitive difficulties that the individual struggles to work around. So if we each think about our own learning process, we can all identify areas where we excel and others that we tend to avoid. And maybe we don't have a good spatial sense, so we're the person that can't really navigate with maps and we get lost. Or maybe we don't pick up languages very easily. Or maybe we miss subtle social cues and kind of struggle in social interactions. And underpinning each of these abilities is our unique cognitive profile of strengths and areas of challenge. And in most cases, we can work around those challenges and they don't have a significant impact on our lives other than we may avoid certain activities. So again, I would encourage you to look at that cognitive questionnaire to get a snapshot. And individuals with learning difficulties are the ones that significantly struggle because they have multiple cognitive functions that come together that are at a deficit or an area of difficulty to make those workarounds challenging. And how do we look at the work that we do at Arrowsmith? I call this a capacity-based program because we're not teaching content at all. We're not providing compensations or strategies for learning. Our goal is really to fundamentally change the individual's cognitive functioning. So we use targeted cognitive programs. We have 19 different programs for 19 different capacities. And we use principles coming out of neuroscience, differential stimulation, and effort for processing. And our research is showing these are leading to structural and functional changes in the brain that then flow into changes in cognition, which improve the learner's ability to learn, which then flow into better social emotional well-being and increased academic and career success. And Alvaro Fernandez, I think, who opened the event today, his quote here, if a network supporting a brain function is repeatedly stimulated through practice and training, it will become stronger, contributing to the optimization of that brain function. And this is a premise that underlies all of what we do. Change the brain, change cognitive capacity, change academic outcomes, change social emotional well-being. So what is a cognitive function? How do we define it? It's the job of a region of the brain or network of regions critical to specific aspects of learning. And it works along a continuum. So someone can have superior or excellent ability in a cognitive function, they can have average ability, or they can have a mild, moderate, severe, or very severe weakness in that cognitive function. And there are multiple cognitive functions. So anytime we do any activity, a combination of functions come together to carry out that activity. And our individual cognitive profile is made up of those combinations and permutations of strengths and areas of difficulty. And to this date, I've been doing this work for 40 plus years. I have yet to meet someone who has all of these capacities at the same level. And to me, the power of neuroplasticity is that each can be enhanced. And each of these cognitive functions are the building blocks or foundational capacities necessary for various types of learning. So if we look on this slide, and there are numbers associated beside each one, we see the functions that make up the whole cohort program. And this is being implemented at St. Isabel and SEC in Madrid. We're just going into our second year. So in grade 1, we picked cognitive functions that are developmentally appropriate for the skills that need to be learned at that age/stage. So grade 1, we've selected the cognitive function that is motor symbol sequencing. This is responsible for motor planning, which is critical for writing and eye tracking in reading. And then in grade 2, students work on the visual memory necessary to learn and retain symbol patterns required to learn to read and spell. Then grade 3, this involves quantification sense. This is the capacity that allows us to understand number, quantity, do mental calculations, learn math facts, and it allows us to time schedule. We all know people that constantly run late, and it might be that they have a weakness in this capacity, or as an adult, this is what allows you to budget money. Then in grade 4, we move on to focus on symbol relations or reasoning. And this is the capacity underlying our ability to grasp concepts across all learning domains. This is critical for logical reasoning, for comprehending what we read, for what we hear, and to understand cause and effect necessary for insight. If someone has a difficulty here, they don't really have insight into their behavior or why they do things. Then in grade 5, students strengthen the symbolic thinking, or this is executive functioning. This is the capacity needed to think critically, to problem solve, generate strategies, make considered decisions, and have mental initiative. In grade 6, we shift to strengthening nonverbal thinking. This is critical for perceiving and interpreting nonverbal information required for social interactions. And currently, we're just working in the schools we're working in up to grade 6. But in grade 7 and 8, I conceptualized we would focus on aspects of auditory memory, critical for encoding and retaining information. So in each year, a different cognitive function critical for learning would be strengthened. And the students do this just 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week in their regular classrooms. and a number of research studies. If people are interested, these are all on our website. So I encourage people to go in and investigate, and we have done some work, which I'll talk about with UCJC, which I'm really excited about, and that's ongoing. And also, if anybody's interested in joining our research community, we have a global research community, please contact me, because we're always interested in expanding our research. We have several studies, and a new study in January starting with Harvard, which I'm very excited about. And actually, Fuji from Japan is getting involved in the study. So what are we seeing in the brains of individuals that we're working on and are engaging in these cognitive programs? So the research is showing changes in connectivity within and between the following networks. So the default mode network, the dorsal attention network, the salience network, and the frontal parietal or executive control network. And these are involved in a number of processes that are essential for learning. So things like attention, problem solving, planning, strategizing, working memory, which we all know is the ability to hold and manipulate information in one's mind as required to perform tasks, cognitive control. These are processes that maintain behavior in the service of achieving goals, comprehension, memory, the ability to take the perspective of another, which is really critical in our world for empathy, self-awareness through the integration of sensory, emotional, and cognitive information, which is critical for emotional intelligence, mental initiative, processing speed, and efficiency. And one of the researchers we're working with talks about why processing efficiency in the brain is important. She says, we don't want to always have to be doing maximal effort in our brains. It's just like our muscles. If your brain is fit and accomplishes a task, you should be able to dial it down, and that frees your cognitive resources to do other things. So more activation in these networks and between these networks is beneficial to all aspects of learning, as we're seeing in the cognitive and academic outcome data. So what are we seeing in terms of these brain changes translating into cognition? This is research that was done at 3 universities, 2 in Canada and 1 in the United States. And they found significant cognitive changes on the Woodcock-Johnson standardized measures. So things like cognitive efficiency, processing speed, auditory processing, fluid reasoning, working memory, short and long-term memory. And in the summer of 2021, we added measures from the Cambridge Brain Science Battery, and we're seeing significant improvements on measures of attention, response inhibition, spatial planning, and working memory. And we've just conducted another study. We're just getting all of the data in to analyze again using both the Woodcock-Johnson and the Cambridge Brain Science Battery. So I'm excited to look at that data. And all of these cognitive domains are critical to the individual's ability to understand, to reason, to process information automatically, quickly, accurately, to retain information, and to sustain attention necessary for problem solving. These are all essential cognitive capacities required for learning, not just in the classroom, but for learning throughout life. And then how do these translate into academic learning? So we're seeing brain changes, we're seeing cognitive changes, we're seeing academic learning changes. We're seeing the rate of learning accelerates, so students are able to acquire academic skills more quickly. And these improvements show up on measures of academic achievement. So again, this is across 3 universities. These is the Woodcock-Johnson, but the academic achievement. So we're seeing improvements in word recognition, reading speed, comprehension, various aspects of writing, several aspects of mathematics, receptive language. And I've always argued that it's our brain that underlies learning. So you change the brain, you change cognition, you change learning. And then what is the research telling us in terms of social emotional outcomes? This is research at the University of British Columbia in Canada. And they're concluding that students over the course of 1 year in the Arrowsmith cognitive programs report a greater sense of well-being, a more open mindset, an increased sense of locus of control because they begin to see themselves as agents of change in their life, an increase in their social and leadership skills, a greater ability to focus and attend, a reduction in anxiety and depression. And to me, what's fascinating is there was a positive trend in the reduction of the stress hormone cortisol. So not only did the students report positive changes, but their bodies physiologically were changing in a positive direction. Last summer, we added the immediate mood scale, and we're showing significant positive gains in mood. So what are parents observing? They're seeing changes in their children in oral comprehension, understanding, grasping concepts, engagement, which involves focus, attention, and mental initiative in the learning process, the use of language, which includes improved vocabulary, emotional intelligence, and school performance. So now getting into what we're seeing in the whole cohort program, this was a study done in Australia in a public school. There were 4 grade 1 classes, and we added the motor symbol sequencing program into one of those grade 1 classes. So 30 minutes a day, students were doing the exercise to learn motor plans, the same as the students are doing in Madrid. And they pre and post tested these students on the Wold sentence copy test. And this is a test to see how quickly and accurately can you copy material. So the other 3 classes were doing traditional writing programs versus the one class doing the motor planning activity. And what we saw over the course of the year from the pre-test to the post-test is the group doing that 30 minutes a day of motor planning significantly improved in their performance, being able to write accurately and quickly compared to the other 3 groups. And interestingly, there were 5 students that were identified in kindergarten before grade 1 as being at risk for reading difficulty, and the recommendation was to put them in reading recovery. Instead, they decided to put them in the class doing that 30 minutes of motor planning a day. And because it not only works on motor planning for the written process, but also motor planning for eye tracking, what we found is 10 weeks into the program, all 5 students were de-identified. They began reading at a proficient level and did not need any reading intervention. So not only did it benefit the students without learning difficulties in the class, it benefited the students that were put into class with learning difficulties. And then there was a school in South Carolina that implemented the whole cohort model in their grade 2 class. These students were doing 2 cognitive exercises a day. And what they found were significant changes, again, in a number of academic measures, so reading, spelling, writing, but also cognitive attention, planning, self-organization, being able to set goals. And they followed these students out of the grade 2 classroom. And when they were in grade 3, they tested them on a math accuracy test, and they found they outperformed the students in grade 4 and 5. And they also found these students demonstrated significantly greater willingness to tackle more difficult math problems than the other students. And the teacher commented, she said, there's something about Aerosmith that makes students excited to try something new. What I would argue is it gives students the cognitive resources to be able to effectively try something new. And then there was a study that we did with a group of students in Washington State, just out of Seattle. So these are students in grades 6 to 11, again, not students with learning difficulties, but they worked on the symbol relations or the reasoning activity over the course of their academic school year, again, just as a regular part of their curriculum. And they looked at standardized measures, so they used the California Achievement Test and the measure of academic progress, and they found significant changes, again, across a range of academic domains, same as the other studies, so vocabulary, comprehension, math, both computation and conceptual grasp, significantly changed over the course of the year for all of these students. And then they had the students report what they were seeing in terms of changes in mathematics and English, which correlated with the standardized measure changes. So again, the ability to grasp new concepts, faster at completing problems, making fewer errors, understanding multi-step problems, and then in English, their comprehension improved. They could make connections faster, easier to take notes, to write more clearly. And then they also reported just changes that they had experienced in general learning. So again, they were better able to follow instructions. They were more attentive, more focused, more observant, more self-disciplined. They felt that they were better prepared for college, the older students. They were able to retain more information, hold more information in their head. So again, the students are changing on standardized academic measures, not because they're doing academics, but because they're engaged in the cognitive program, which is stimulating the brain, allowing them to more effectively learn in overall and learn in the academic program. And then we come to the study that was done in Madrid at UCJC with Dr. Lara Herrero, I think, who might be there today, and Dr. Miguel Angel Perez. So we started a few years ago, just in grade 3, doing that symbol relations, the reasoning exercise, 40 minutes a day with the students in their mainstream classroom, and saw gains in visual spatial ability, attention, and planning abilities. And then subsequently moved it into grade 1, and again seeing significant gains in visual spatial numerical ability. And partway through last year, moved it into grades 1 to 6 with that plan. In each grade, the students are doing 30 minutes a day on a developmentally appropriate exercise, and we're continuing to do research, and I'll be in Madrid in October, and looking forward to sitting down with the researchers and discussing the data and where we are. So really excited that SEC and UCJC are really trailblazers. The only 2 schools in the world currently that are doing my grade 1 to grade 6 model are SEC in Madrid and Samuel Marsden Girls' School in Wellington, New Zealand. So Southern Hemisphere, Northern Hemisphere, 2 trailblazing organizations implementing this and doing research on this model. So again, just a quick recap, what is Aerosmith? It's really targeted cognitive programs that can be incorporated right into the classroom, that can basically change the brain to change the capacity of the learner to learn. So changing that black box to be able to engage with the learning process with more resources, more cognitive wherewithal, that then flows out to social emotional well-being and increased academic and career success. So what is our vision for this work? It's really that school becomes a place where children go to learn, which they do, and where we strengthen their brains simultaneously. I would like to see a school being a place where all students have the opportunity to engage in programs to enhance their cognitive functioning, and that beginning in grade 1 and up through university, cognitive exercises just become a regular part of curriculum. And the end result, students will be able to learn with ease and joy. They can learn effectively and efficiently. And for students with learning difficulties, not only can they dare to dream, but they will have the cognitive wherewithal to realize their dreams. But again, this has application across the educational spectrum, whether you have a learning difficulty or students without learning difficulties in regular classrooms. And in some of the other work that we do, we see professionals at the other end who obviously have been successful, would never have been identified as having a learning difficulty, but they have a cognitive challenge. I call it a cognitive mismatch that makes it a little challenging for them to carry out their work. Like the pilot that I worked with that couldn't hold auditory instructions, so couldn't remember what the air traffic controller was telling him, which is a little worrisome. But if he got that addressed in grade 6 or 7 or 8, it never would have been a challenge in his job, and potentially been a danger to others. So I believe this model is a perfect marriage between neuroscience and education, where every student can benefit, and no matter where they are on the continuum of cognitive functioning, we can move them along that continuum. So to me, this idea, our brain is our most important asset, and yes, our brains shape us, but we understand through neuroplasticity, if we can harness and leverage those principles, we can actually shape our brains. And certainly the World Economic Forum, the OECD, a lot of the big think tanks are thinking about how do we prepare students today for an uncertain future. We really don't know what is going to be required to navigate the world in, 15, 20 years from now. And I argue we prepared their brains, and then of their brains, will have the resources to be able to handle whatever the future throws their way. And I believe that the Cohort Program is one of the tools in our toolkit for us to achieve this, because we can enhance the cognitive capacities necessary to understand and analyze abstract relationships, to think critically, to be flexible in thought, to retain information and accept and consider other points of view. These are really essential abilities required for all aspects of learning. It really prepares students to be lifelong learners. So I think, how do we prepare students for an uncertain future? I think it's through integrating and putting the brain in the education equation through incorporating it into regular curriculum. And if people are interested, we have a 5-part webinar series. It's on our website, looking at shaping our brain, how neuroplasticity can enrich our lives. I would encourage people, if they're interested, to just go on the website and check it out. It's a really fascinating and interesting webinar series. And then there's some other resources, some books. People probably know Norman Doidge's work, The Brain That Changes Itself. The work of Arrowsmith is chapter 2. The 2 books, The Brain Pioneer and The Brain School, sadly, they're all in English. My book actually is in Spanish, if people are interested. But the Brain Pioneer and Brain School were written by Howard Eaton. The one is a children's book. The other is a book for educators. They're available. He's kindly made them available as free downloads on our website. So please access those. If people are interested in seeing where we are around the world, that's where we are. So again, I just encourage people to explore these concepts and ideas. And if anyone wants to join our global research initiative, please reach out, because we're really interested in expanding that community. So thank you. I hope I didn't go over my 20 minutes. So really thank you. And thank you to the people that are in the audience from SEC for having the vision to put this work into education. I'm deeply grateful. So thank you.